Last week I did a review of a dinky little low-cost DAC from Topping called the E30. Well, this particular week I thought I would up the performance and also the price along with it, and I'm looking at a tabletop, a shelf mounted DAC, definitely not portable or mobile, this one. It's from a company called Heed, and the DAC is called the Abacus. Price wise, well, price is variable, or at least variable according to the research I've done at any rate. The price can be around £1,200, £1,200, but I have seen one or two retailers actually sell the Abacus for £999. So it's worth shopping around if you're looking to buy this particular DAC. Now, the Abacus DAC is presented in a half width chassis, and because I think DACs really need lots of careful isolation to keep high frequency noise down, seeing a DAC in a half width chassis really triggers one or two alarm bells. But I've reviewed half width chassis equipment from Heed in the past, and they've done pretty well. Inside the actual chassis, the isolation techniques they use to keep noise down has always been pretty effective, so I had high hopes for this particular review. The DAC can handle both PCM and DSD. For PCM, that means up to 32-bit 384, as well as DSD 128 run in native form. DSD 128 is these days relatively low, while the once elusive native standard is again an increasingly familiar phrase. That said, successful DACs are not about figures, but implementation. On the front fascia, well, Heed take a bit of a left turn in design terms, because instead of the usual rectangular, centrally mounted output display, what Heed does is sticks the display on the right hand side, and well, it's circular, and it certainly looks very nice indeed. That window shows source and digital feed type. I like the way the source change forces the readout to swish horizontally in a 50s TV type blur of fonts, as one source title replaces another. There are 6 source buttons. The 6th is connected to an expansion port option. When that port is empty, this option is inactive. As for the expansion port itself, I asked the company about it, and it replied, quote, "At the moment there are no expansion modules available, but Heed is working on a plugin, and that expansion port is there for possible streaming options in the future." A plastic remote is also included, slim, functional with a defined click to each button. It features the useful menu button, but also a series of redundant CD transport commands because I wasn't using a Heed CD player. Now, a word of caution: during testing, while I was pressing the buttons on this remote, the remote actually changed some of the buttons on my preamp, while one button turned my preamp off altogether. So be wary of that. You certainly don't want the Heed remote to turn on your kettle and change the channel on your TV. Accessible via the remote's menu button is a range of PCM and DSD filters. The difference between the linear phase fast and slow roll-off is subtle, but the former adds slightly more definition. Additional filters include minimum phase soft, which expands the soundstage left and right when compared to linear phase, and hard, which adds further definition. There's also 2 DSD filters, normal mode and direct mode. Direct mode adds a slight enhancement of air and space. The rear features a range of inputs such as a B-type asynchronous USB port, RCA coax, BNC, 2 opticals, and that expansion card I mentioned behind a metal plate. You also get a pair of line outs. All of that takes space on the rear left. To the right is a power socket and a rocker power switch. What I liked about the installation section of the Heed was that all of the source numbers on the front were replicated around the back, so there's no possibility of getting confused about what cable goes where and putting cables in the wrong sockets and just getting frustrated. This is very, very straightforward indeed. As I say, this is a relatively small box spanning 22 centimeters by 8.7 by 32.5 centimeters. Available in black or silver, this thing weighs in at a reasonable 4.5 kilograms. I began by hooking up my DAC to a Leema Elements CD player using the Leema as a transport and playing a bit of vocal jazz from Mr. Bing Crosby. Bing with a Beat was the album featuring Bob Scobie's Frisco Jazz Band and the track Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella. Panning back away and looking at the music as a whole, I was happy to recognise that this was a cosy rendition from a group of performers. It wasn't a bucket of highlights, which is often what DACs tend to do to you sometimes. Often when you listen to some DACs, you can distill a track like this to mere bullet points. Vocal crescendo, trumpet solo, percussion bit here, clarinet there. Okay, next. Instead, what the Abacus gave me was a series of relaxing minutes in the company of Crosby, Scobie and the boys. Crosby didn't pop out at me like a jack-in-the-box, thank goodness. The brass introduction didn't scare me half to death, which was a relief, and the initial rim-shot percussive solo didn't sound like a carpenter at full pelt. What I had here was a more coherent and integrated mix. Every aspect of the music appeared to be part of that mix. Nothing suddenly zoomed out and hit me between the eyes. In a word, civilized, which was very nice indeed. Looking in more detail, treble was delicate and nuanced. Mid-range never barked or was ill-disciplined in any way. All it did was provide plenty of tonal information, while the Crosby vocal was full of textural emphasis. I turned to more dynamic fare now, and the Cure's quite brilliant Guitar Fest track, The Kiss. This ditty provided plenty of opportunities for the lead guitar, which swirls away in joyous complexity, to hit a series of nasty bright crescendos. But it never did. Not once. There was a dynamic contrast, yes, but it never crossed the line. Instead, the guitar morphed and changed and squeezed itself into sonic corners. It stretched and sprang from the darkness, and in all of that time, it did nothing else but educate and entertain. Behind it, the percussion shifted from tone to timbre, expanding and reducing its reverb, the power of each hit and the speed of strike. In effect, the nuances of the percussion were evident here. Transparency around the lower frequencies was easily discerned. Next, I decided to plug in my digital audio player and played some Dire Straits, specifically a track called So Far Away at 24-bit 88.2. This version of the album that I have in this format is rather bright, I would say, rather compressed. Drums can sound quite harsh, and crescendos, vocal crescendos, can sound rather forced and tense. So this particular track is a bit of a challenge for any DAC, but the Heed managed to handle the issues well, partly because it stretched the soundstage out wide left and right, which minimised the clinical edge from the music, like pulling out an accordion, separating and isolating detail highlights to move the focus more upon the wealth of detail rather than the upper mid-range edge. The result was a delight, as listening fatigue dropped like a stone and a good time replaced it. I then plugged in my Apple MacBook laptop and played a selection of DSD tracks, different genres, and used the software player Audiophile Plus to do so. Now, music played via DSD sounds a little different, especially as you rack up the resolution. There's often a body and an accentuation in dynamic contrast from well-formed DSD productions. On the DSD tracks I tested here, bold percussion was present, but it was the sheer diversity in texture that impressed here, between the drums and the secondary percussion, while the lead and backing vocals offered a veritable street scene of voices that provided a party or gathering atmosphere. In amongst this melange was a clear and concise acoustic guitar that was focused and precise but flowed with some ease. So what do I think of the Heed Abacus? Well, I think Heed has provided one of the most refined DACs that I've heard for a long time, especially at this price point. It never jumps down your throat, it doesn't grab you by the ears and shout, listen to this, and now this, on the left, the right, which can be fine in terms of detail highlights, but that sort of presentation can just be exhausting. There is a sense of neutrality and balance from the Abacus, and in these days of digital dominance, it's a bit of a relief, I can tell you. Listening to an album through some DACs can make me feel that I've just watched a 45-minute advertisement. The experience has been more of a trial than a sense of enjoyment. The Heed Abacus does none of that. It allows you to come to it. So if you want to focus on a piece of detail while listening to music via the Abacus, then sure, you can go into that music and find that detail. If you just want to chill out and relax and let the music wash over you, fine, you can do that too. But the Heed doesn't dominate. It doesn't slap you around the chops and demand attention. It allows you to do what you want to do. If you just want to relax, fine. If you want to pick out fine details around the soundstage, fine. It's a very easygoing DAC. So the Heed Abacus gets the big thumbs up from me. I'd like to thank you for staying to the end of this video and also for subscribing. I really do appreciate your support, and without your support, I ain't got nothing, guys, so it's all down to you. Thank you very much for your help and support in growing this channel. It's much appreciated, as I say. Now, down below in the description, there's all kinds of links. If you'd just like to check those out, it just shows you where I am on social media, and if you'd like to contact me, I have a Facebook group as well, which you're welcome to join. I also have my own Patreon page, which offers a host of different types of exclusive material on there you won't find anywhere else. And there's also my blog with over 5 years of material and content. It's just crammed full of reviews and news and features and all kinds of stuff. So hopefully I will see you here, or I'll see you on one of those platforms. In the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye. So I hope I will be able to see you in the next video. Until then, bye bye for now.